This is really turning out to be one hell of a year for the horror fans. Well, I'm definitely not complaining. And Evil Dead Burn adds yet another feather in the genre cap. I mean, the hype was real, and it was for all to see ever since the trailer dropped. But the real deal lives up to the hype. Usually when it comes to an Evil Dead movie, I'm almost used to a set format. But this time around, I love the clever spin given to the story. Personal trauma adding to the terrifying Deadites in action. Also, the best part is that even though this is essentially a standalone film, there are tons of connections, lore building, and Easter eggs that refer to earlier movies. And this is really something that makes the franchise better. In this video, I'll explore every little detail about the movie that you might have missed, some of the shockers, and the interesting Easter eggs that'll entertain the fans of the franchise. There will be some major spoilers along the way, so you have been warned. The Professor Raymond Nobi connection. Like I said, the best thing about the narrative is how it links up with the past stories of the franchise, and the immediate connection that you'll notice is that of Professor Raymond Nobi. So the story of Evil Dead Burn is centered around the death of Will, who comes from a rather disturbed family. However, what's more interesting is that the family has major connections to the earlier lore, and it's soon revealed that Will's grandfather was actually a friend of Professor Raymond Nobi. If you need to refresh your memory, this is the same guy whose voice can be heard in the recording in the first couple Evil Dead movies. He discovered the details of the cursed Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead, and recorded the details of all that happened after reading the book. A closer look at the family home in Evil Dead Burn throws up some fun Easter eggs, such as the recording of Will's grandfather and the remnants of his work with Professor Nobi. Professor Nobi and Joseph's grandfather were part of a cult. I think this is something that was missing in the earlier Evil Dead movies. The lore building that adds more context to the story. In this film, we find out that Will's grandfather was well aware of the evils that lurk around, and he was aware of the Necronomicon. In fact, it turns out that he worked alongside Professor Nobi and a few others who were part of a group that studied the Necronomicon and came up with ways to repel the Candarian demon. You could almost call this a cult, and they called themselves the Circle of Wise Men, which definitely wasn't very modest of them. But they did come up with a crucial weapon to deal with the demons, a special dagger that's important enough for the demons to hunt down the entire family in search of this weapon. What is the weapon that kills Deadites? The Circle of Wise Men came up with something that was powerful enough to spook the demon. They figured out that a special Candarian dagger has the ability to kill Deadites. And this is yet another piece of trivia that binds the movie with the earlier ones because it's Professor Raymond Nobi who discovered the dagger. It's a special weapon that features a hilt carved from human bone. And what makes it unique is that it's the only known weapon that can kill Deadites and Dark Ones. There's even a rich history associated with these daggers, and they were forged as early as 3000 BC by the followers of the high priest Urugan in ancient Mesopotamia. Is the Circle of Wise Men connected to Ash? Well, it seems like the Easter eggs keep getting better and deeper because I realized that the Circle of Wise Men is not some random group. You may have heard about them as a reference to a character from Army of Darkness. This was a mage who actually helped Ash William, and this passing of knowledge about the Deadites seems to be a basic purpose of the group who looked to help humanity in this battle. The direct Jessica connection to Evil Dead Rise. I don't know if it's even fair to call this a standalone film at this point. Evil Dead Burn may have a whole new story, but it's deeply connected with the earlier movies, as you've already seen. One crucial little detail that you cannot miss while watching the Deadite Jessica, who shows up pretty early on in the film. You might remember Jessica as a character from Evil Dead Rise, and you can see her at the beginning and the end of the movie. She was headed for a weekend at the lake, but fate had other plans, and she was attacked by an unseen force. Then you see her in the scene where a sick Jessica scalps her cousin and kills her friend. Evil Dead Burn connects to this very smartly as Deadite Jessica attacks and kills a couple of fishermen brutally at the beginning of the film. She then walks to the road where she waits until Will drives right into her and crashes. The death of Will is not random. You know it's a well-written script when every little detail makes sense and is connected to some bigger purpose. The death of Will in the terrifying car crash is not random, but a part of the plan of the demons to get to the weapon. As I mentioned before, Will's grandfather was a part of a group that came up with an effective way to eliminate Deadites, and the assumption of the demons was that his family would know something about it. The weapon could still be hidden away in their house, and killing Will was the first step to infiltrate the family. The lead is followed back to Will's family, and then the violent massacre is unleashed. The 2013 Remake reference. This is yet another smart bit of referencing. And I was surprised because I didn't expect this to remember the remake. And no, I'm not even talking about the minor Easter eggs like the muddy pair of boots. So Will has a younger brother named Joseph, who is writing a book based on his grandfather's extensive research. His mother, Susan, doesn't approve of this and wants him to throw away any trace of his grandfather, who had apparently abandoned his family. Thankfully, Will doesn't obey, which turns out to be a real savior in the end. But this so-called trash has some very interesting items. What stands out for me is the detailed diary that has newspaper clippings referencing the events of the 2013 remake, and also the mayhem caused in Evil Dead Rise. It contains the events in 1983 as well, and it comes across as a major revelation that he actually tried to warn the kids in the cabin. The end credits reveal more connections to Evil Dead Rise. I did talk about Deadite Jessica already, but an even more significant connection to Evil Dead Rise takes place during the end credits. The first one reveals the fate of Polly, who has seemingly gotten away, and a young woman stops to help her. However, it soon becomes clear that she will be the next Deadite, which just about continues the wave, just like it did in Evil Dead Rise. Secondly, at the end of the credits, we're taken back to the crematorium, where Will's funeral was held. The funeral director is back to work with her daughter, and she's not too happy about the vacancy created because of the death of her earlier employee. When she steps out, her daughter is alone in the room, and she's surrounded by several uncollected urns. One of them reads Ellie, and then there's a noise, and you can see her, the Deadite Ellie. The funeral director's daughter is killed, and the Deadite proclaims, "Mummy is back." So basically, the primary villain from Evil Dead Rise returns in the final moments of Evil Dead Burn, establishing this twisted universe is all connected. Alice nearly reads from the Necronomicon. This really turned out to be haunting deja vu. Well, it almost did. Will's wife Alice stumbles upon Will's grandfather Benjamin's research, and this is after the family has witnessed some of the Deadite horror already. She nearly reads from the Necronomicon, and just as she's about to finish, she gets attacked by the possessed family dog Max, who was brutally killed by Will's father Edgar earlier. The number of times we've seen someone reading those words and then unleashing the demonic hell, it was almost a heart-stopping moment there. The iconic chainsaw in action. Well, it wouldn't be a true Evil Dead movie without the mighty chainsaw, would it? It's a great fan service that we see Alice arming herself with a rotary saw before she gets ambushed by Polly. Of course, it's soon replaced by the Candarian dagger that she finds in the attic, and this comes in handy when she uses it to kill Deadite Joseph. She later uses the saw to decapitate Susan, Will's mother, who becomes possessed. She also uses it on Edgar before she sets the house on fire. Finally, she uses the dagger again to kill Max. And lastly, the dagger comes in handy to kill Deadite Will, who is trapped by Alice in a pit filled with tar, and then killed with the dagger. Will's grandmother Polly is the possessed individual who gets away, which fits into the continuity and the theme of Evil Dead Rise, as I mentioned before. The wrong dagger joke is just a throwback to Evil Dead 2. This is one of those moments that made me smile even as all the chaos unfolded. It's a quick scene that offers a fun throwback to Evil Dead 2. The fans will know that there's this huge scattered collection of Candarian daggers that do not look alike, and they're spread across the decades-long history of the franchise. One of the Deadites gets stabbed by the dagger that was last seen in Evil Dead 2, and it shrugs off the attack dismissively and says, "Wrong one," before continuing with its carnage. This is a reminder that Candarian daggers look different in different movies, and this is probably a small yet significant Easter egg for the fans of the franchise. You can no longer kill Deadites by dismembering them. I think this is a significant change that's been introduced in the franchise in Evil Dead Burn. Usually, we know that a reliable trick to defeat Deadites is to hack the body apart and burn the remains. Now, it's only the Candarian dagger that works, and no matter how badly you dismember and mutilate a Deadite, it just keeps coming. I wonder if they'll make this a permanent change or if it was just a fun diversion for this movie.
Open the door.
You are my dead bastard!
The ending teases Evil Dead Wrath. This is a very good piece of information for the fan. Evil Dead Wrath is already in the cards, and this will be the next installment of the franchise. Evil Dead Burn does well to establish that the threat of the Deadites is not contained to any one particular location, and the lore building does well to give the fans more context about things that were previously ambiguous. Now, the next movie, Evil Dead Wrath, will actually be more of a prequel, premised in the year 1972. Technically, it is even a prequel to the original Evil Dead, and I think we might get to see more of the club that researched on the Deadites and the threat of this hellish dimension. The curse is definitely not done with the family yet, but for the next part, we might just get to witness the origin of the curse. If you haven't checked out the movie already, I strongly recommend that you head to the theaters soon, because this is one experience that you cannot miss. The gory bits really stand out, and in true Evil Dead fashion, it's not meant for the squeamish. The story's definitely a lot better by franchise standards, so don't mistake this for a random slasher flick. And I hope all these Easter eggs and hidden details will make your experience even more enriching. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the movie and all of these interesting Easter eggs. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and please make sure to ring that notification bell, so when more Evil Dead rises from the grave, You find out first. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and as always, stay marvelous.